In the fall of 2023, on a Tuesday that looked exactly like every other Tuesday for the last 26 years, I stood in my bathroom and looked at the man in the mirror. I didn't recognize him. At 51 years old, I had everything a man was supposed to want: a beautiful house in a big city, a successful career, 2 grown children, and a marriage that had lasted over a quarter of a century. But as I stared into my own eyes, I realized I was looking at a ghost. I leaned over the sink, the cold porcelain under my palms, and whispered 5 words that had been rotting inside me for a decade. I can't live like this.
My name is Mark, and this is the story of how I died at 51, only to realize that for the first time in my life, I was actually starting to breathe. To understand why I walked away from a 26-year marriage, you have to understand the slow, agonizing erosion of a man's soul. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like the movies where you find a lipstick stain or a secret phone. No, my story is about the silence, the kind of silence that screams. For years, I was the pillar. I provided a life that most would envy. We had the vacations, the comfortable savings, the stability. My wife didn't work. That was the deal we made early on, so she could be there for the kids. But somewhere along the way, our partnership turned into a transaction where I was the only one paying the bill.
I'd come home from a 10-hour day, and instead of a "how was your day," I'd be met with a list of what we didn't have. "Did you see the house the Millers just bought?" she'd ask, not even looking up from her wine glass. "They have a 3-car garage now. Must be nice." It was never enough. I was the chef, the handyman, the ATM, and the emotional punching bag. I'd cook dinner while she sat on the porch, and then I'd listen to an hour-long lecture on how I'd failed to trigger her happiness that day. Then there was the alcohol. She called them outbursts. I called them character assassinations. She'd have a few glasses of wine at a dinner party, and suddenly, I was the target. She'd make jokes about my hobbies, my career, my personality, making me feel small and humiliated in front of our oldest friends. The next morning, when the sun was out and the wine had worn off, the script would change. "I only said those things because you made me feel insecure, Mark," she'd say, stone-cold sober. "If you were more present, I wouldn't need to drink." I did the therapy, I read the books, I gave 110% of myself to a person who was only interested in taking. I had trained her to take me for granted. I had made myself small so she could feel big. And that morning in the mirror, I realized that if I stayed, there would be nothing left of me to save. In February 2024, I moved out. The sound of the door closing behind me was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It wasn't a victory, it felt like a funeral. I spent the next 7 months in a small apartment, sitting in the quiet, going to therapy, and unlearning the habit of apologizing for existing. I had to be honest with myself. I had a part in the unraveling too. My sin wasn't infidelity or neglect, it was silence. I had let things slide that should have been addressed 20 years ago. I had tolerated the intolerable. I made a promise to myself: respect, affection, appreciation. If a relationship didn't have those 3 pillars, I wasn't just walking away, I wasn't even walking in. My adult kids were my rock. They didn't take sides, but they didn't have to. They'd seen the exhaustion in my eyes for years. "Dad," my son told me over a beer, "we just want to see you smile again. For real this time." So after 7 months of solitude, I did the unthinkable. I downloaded Bumble and Hinge. The last time I'd been on a date, Bill Clinton was in the White House, and you had to call a girl's landline and pray her father didn't answer. Now I was a 51-year-old man navigating a world of swipes, ghosting, and biopics. It felt surreal. It felt like landing on a different planet. But I decided to be the one thing most people are afraid to be on those apps: honest. My profile didn't have photos from 2012. I didn't lie about my height. I stated clearly, separated, looking for something real. Life is too short for games. And then the adventure began.
Over the next 6 weeks, I went on nearly 30 dates. It was like a crash course in human nature. Most were first dates, short, low-stakes meetings. My goal wasn't to find a wife by Friday. I just wanted to remember how to talk to people again. I asked questions, I listened, and most importantly, I used humor. If we couldn't laugh together within the first 15 minutes, there was no point in ordering a second round of coffee. I quickly learned the rules of the game. Rule number 1, never do a full dinner on a first date. I made that mistake exactly once. It was a long, excruciating 2-hour sentence with a woman whose energy through the screen was vibrant, but in person was closer to a funeral director. We sat there over expensive sea bass while she explained in agonizing detail why her 3 previous ex-husbands were all narcissists. Then there was the sushi incident. I met a woman who seemed lovely until the waiter arrived. She ordered enough rolls to feed a small infantry unit, ate 3 pieces, and then asked for a box to take the rest home for her kids. I realized then that I wasn't on a date, I was a mobile grocery delivery service. And I'll never forget the sober date. Her profile said she was sober, which I respected. I made a lighthearted joke about her being the perfect designated driver for our future adventures. She went stone cold. Apparently to her, sober meant not only that she didn't drink, but that she couldn't be in the same zip code as a man who enjoyed a craft beer once a month. The date ended before the ice in my water could melt. I started hearing terms that sounded like a foreign language. Ethical non-monogamy, love bombing, gaslighting. I saw the battle scars on the women I met. They had been lied to so often, by men using photos from a decade ago, men who claimed to be 6 feet tall but stood 5'8", or men who said they were divorced when their wives were actually upstairs putting the kids to bed. They had thick walls. Some told me they wouldn't even speak to a man unless his divorce papers had been dry for 5 years. I understood their boundaries, but I stayed true to my path. I was emotionally available, I was honest, and I was ready. I didn't want to be disqualified for being too new to the single life. I live in a big city, and I started to see the beauty in it. There are so many good people out there. People who, like me, had crawled out of the wreckage of a bad marriage and were just looking for a spark of something real. A friend told me, "Mark, everyone brings a little backpack of issues to a first date. You just have to find someone whose backpack matches yours." And then, just as I was starting to enjoy the adventure of being single, everything changed. I met her. Let's call her Sarah. The connection wasn't a spark, it was a wildfire. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, it was the ease. For the first time in 26 years, I didn't feel like I had to perform. I didn't have to watch my words for fear of triggering an outburst. We talked about our lives, our failures, and our hopes. She had just come out of a 14-year marriage herself. I was her first and only online date. After just 2 nights of talking until the stars faded, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I sent a text to the other women I had been seeing. I told them the truth. I've met someone I really want to focus on. It felt right. It felt honorable. That was 10 months ago. Today, I wake up in a different world. I'm with a woman I admire, respect, and above all, adore. When I'm with her, I feel emotionally safe. I feel seen. There's a balance of effort that I never knew existed. We communicate, we laugh, and when we make mistakes, we fix them together, rather than using them as weapons. For a long time, I viewed my divorce as a failure, a 26-year mistake. But standing here now, in the peace of my new life, I realize it wasn't a failure. It was a graduation. That chapter had to close, so this one could begin. If you're listening to this and you're standing where I was, staring into that mirror, feeling like your life is over at 50 or 60, listen to me. There is love after this. There is joy after this. You are not too old. You are not broken. You are not a failure. Just be honest. Be open. Bring the best of who you are to the table and let yourself be surprised.
Because sometimes the best part of your life starts the moment you decide to stop settling for a life that's killing you.